Hey guys, thanks for tuning us in for this 38th episode of Good Questions with Cameron Dole. Special guests for this episode include actress Shannan Wilson, commercial director Bruce Van Dusen, B-movie legend Brian Trenchard-Smith. We'll also speak with author Clint Lorance and actor and now director Colman Domingo. If you would, please take the time to subscribe, drop a like, comment, leave some feedback, and share with your friends. Our first guest is actress Shannan Wilson. We'll talk about some of her upcoming projects and what she's been doing during the pandemic. First off, Shannan, we had to reschedule yesterday, and you decided we're not going to reschedule. We're just going to do this. I'm picturing you in rollers. I mean, I guess nobody uses those anymore, though, do they?
No, but I definitely have foils in my hair. And, you know, we make our salon appointments, and to get it done well, it takes a long time. And with COVID, you forget how long it takes to do your hair. So I had to run out of the salon.
That's right. Now, Shannan, what has 2020 been like in the acting profession, and especially trying to surmise some new gigs, if you will?
Well, 2020, as it has been for all of us, has been one of a kind. And professionally speaking, my career, which I've worked, for about 6 years on building, just was really starting. It's still happening, but, I was booking some really good stuff, and stuff was happening. And then COVID happened, and it happened all so quickly. So a lot of the production all shut down in March, but I am happy to say that things are starting to ramp up again, and production's starting to happen because producers and writers all understand that we all want to see new content and new shows. It's just so important to us as people to have shows to watch.
That's right. And people are running out. I think Netflix is about to run out as much home time as we've had, right?
Yes, I think they are. So one of the shows I'm working on is going to be on Netflix, and so they're going to be starting up production soon. We shot one day in March, and it was shut down the next day.
Wow.
So that's starting to happen again, which we all just want to work. Obviously, there's so many other people that are still out of work. So I think it's just been challenging for everyone. And it's just any movement forward, right, is something positive.
That's right. And I was looking at the different credits as you got a lot of stuff that is in the post-production phase. And how on the actress side of it, how nerve-wracking is that waiting for the post-production to be finalized?
Well, it's always nerve-wracking because you always wonder what the final product's going to be. And I mean, if you see all that stuff that's on my IMDb is pretty recent. So it's just fun to see credits build onto your resume. And the post-production, you just can't, like for Snow Babies, we shot that a couple of years ago, and you just have to be really patient and wait for it to happen and see when it gets released. And I don't know. It's just a waiting game.
And with some of the stuff that you've worked on so far, who are maybe the folks that have maybe given you the best advice, or maybe the moral support that maybe you needed at that time?
Bridget Smith, the director for Snow Babies, that was my first feature film and my biggest booking at the time. And she was just so sweet. You go in, and you're kind of insecure as an actor, and you just want to, it's heavy subject matter. And she would tell me to slow down. I have a tendency to move really fast. I talk fast, and I would put my face away from the camera sometimes. And she's like, no, let them see you, slow down, choose your word, not choose your words, but just slow down and take that all in. And I thought that was really good advice to just kind of slow down and trust yourself a little bit.
And I think that's something we've all learned a little bit this year, haven't we?
Absolutely. That goes across the board for everything we do.
And speaking of that, what has been the thing that you've had that you've learned maybe out of necessity here in 2020 that you're going to carry with you?
That I've learned that just to be in more of a present day mindset. I've learned not to really want more, in a sense, where just be grateful for the stuff that I have now, for my family. I learned, I grew up, I spent summers in Oklahoma.
Oh, really?
You're in Oklahoma, right?
Yes, ma'am.
Yeah, family was always so important, and we really, I think everybody in general got away from a lot of that family time. So I think I've learned, like we all have, just to slow down, be present, and realize you can't control everything, and just appreciate the time that we have.
Does that make it almost bittersweet when you get that call to come back to work?
Yeah, that's funny you say that. I have a 14-year-old and a 13-year-old, and I've really been home since March. And it wasn't that I was insanely busy. I've always been pretty resourceful and figured out. I work at QVC sometimes. I've always figured out ways to work. I ran a company for a long time. And my kids, they're excited. I think if anything, Breck, my son, the other day was like, we have a beach house, and I went there and I spent a couple of days there by myself. The kids went back and I stayed, and my son's like, you could stay a little longer. I think they also want to have a little bit of separation, because I came back in and I'm like, why are your shoes by the door? Why, asking questions. So it is bittersweet, but at the same time, I'm not booked up every single day. I don't think I could ever take a job that I'd have to be gone that long. So.
Now,
or travel for a long time.
Tell us what the latest projects or the most recently upcoming, I should say, projects you have coming.
Well, so Babies was released on September 29th, so we're super excited about that, and people can see that. It's SNO Babies. They can see that on Fandango now and Amazon and Apple. And then I shot a feature, I shot a day a couple of weeks ago, but that's kind of still on the down low. But the biggest thing I have coming up is Halston, which is about the 70s iconic fashion designer. Ewan McGregor is playing Halston, and that will be a Netflix limited series. And it's a Ryan Murphy production. He did Ratchet and Glee and American Horror Story. He's a fantastic producer. And so I landed a part somehow. I would landed a part on some of the episodes. As a character, and she was a real person. I played Bobby Mahoney. She was an actual person. So I'm just so excited about that.
Well, that's awesome. And Shannan, if folks want to find out more information about the different things you're working on, social media-wise as well.
Yeah, they can go to my website, Shannan, SHANNAN, Wilson.com. And that's my Instagram and Twitter. If you Google my name, Shannan Wilson, it pops up. And check out my IMBD and any support. I'm a late, I guess you would say bloomer in this industry for acting. So I'm just proof that it doesn't matter how old you are. If you put your mind to something, you can make it happen.
There you go. Well, Shannan, it's been great to visit with you. I guess you can go get the curlers removed.
The foils out.
Yeah, that too.
See, I've got to get my hair in shape now that I'm going to be seen. See, before nobody saw me.
That's awesome. Well, Shannan, great to visit with you. Hope you have a great rest of your week.
Thank you so much. I really appreciate you talking with me, Cameron.
Up next is commercial director Bruce Van Dusen. Had the chance to talk with him this afternoon about his new book. Bruce Van Dusen on the line, on the Zoom with us today. I'm still trying to get used to that, Bruce. Thanks for taking the time to be on the show.
Thanks for having me, Cameron. Glad to be here.
Now, Bruce, you have your voice has been a little bit of everywhere. Folks may or may not realize it. Give us a little insight into maybe somewhere that they've heard your voice before.
Well, primarily, I'm, as you correctly pointed out, I'm completely unknown to people because I'm a commercial director, and no one sees my name. They see what I do usually as they're leaving to go use the facilities. Which is fine as long as I get paid for it. But one of the things that happens when you direct commercials is you often get involved in the editing of the commercials. And when the commercials are edited, there's always a point at the end where some kind of voice, a man's voice, a woman's voice, the voice of God, or a nerdy voice, or whatever else comes in and tells you the name of the product. Because the assumption being that you're blind and you're watching the commercial, and then tells you that there's a reason to buy the product or underlines that. So oftentimes I would go to editing sessions and the editors would go, "Hey man, you have a good voice. Why don't you lay down that thing that says, Red Lobster's selling deep fried shrimp this week for $12." So I would do that, and then sometimes the clients would wind up hearing that and they would say, the editor would say, we're about to go re-record, get a voiceover, and they would say, no, that guy's good. That guy's fine. So I wound up kind of defaulting into it. So I do, I've done stuff for banks, and I've done stuff for beers, and I've done stuff for insurance companies, and I did one yesterday for Geico. I'll tell you, it's a double-edged sword, Cameron, because the first booking I got to do it, I thought, I'm going to be the voice of American Express or Delta or something. And I went in to become had booked this session, and it was for NyQuil. And I thought, I'm just curious, why am I doing this? And they said, we're doing a campaign that's based on having people read sort of long, very boring stories. And also that we wanted the voices to be kind of boring and monotonous. The point is that people would be able to go to sleep listening to it. I said, yeah, thanks.
Yeah, exactly.
That's great. I said, you think that's my voice by default? And they go, oh yeah, that's probably not like a huge compliment to you, is it? I said, no, but they were, again, whatever. So I was happier when I would get things like, when I would get financial institutions or other things like that. So my voice is out there in the world a little bit. What really happens is that they go out and the copywriters or the people in the agency who are looking for the radio voices say, hey, can we get Jeff Bridges or maybe Morgan Freeman? And then they get the number for that. And then they go, I don't know, let's use this Van Dusen guy because he's scale.
Now, the memoir, 60 Stories About 30 Seconds. Tell us, was this in your idea wheelhouse, or was it something that maybe you did your best to hold off on putting together?
Well, it's a little bit of, I never was planning to do it. I would after I'd been directing commercials for about 10 years, I started to have stories that I would just bore people with at dinners and things like that. I would try to bore them because they'd say, what do you do? And I'd say, oh, I'm a director of television commercials. And they would go, oh, that must be really cool. And you go, no, it's not always that cool. And then you'd have stories to illustrate it. But after I'd done it for a couple of decades, 40, 45 years, I had a lot of stories, and I started to write them down, and then it started to turn into just, instead of being little blackout sketches, I started to work them in order, Cameron, so it was a little bit about how I came in as a kid, and I didn't know anything about it, and kind of learned how this business worked. I learned that the business existed, forget about how it worked, and then kind of made a living at it for what turned out to be a long time. Some people who read it, particularly the people in my business, say, oh, you've just committed career suicide now by writing this. And I said, I don't think it is, but if it is, at least I've had a hand in driving nails into my own coffin, as opposed to somebody trying to take me out themselves. So it's supposed to be, it's not something where I was trying to settle scores. I was trying to, and as a result, I mentioned none of the people. And let me just say to any potential reader, the person who's identified as the biggest jerk in the book is me. So I thought then I could give some other people a little trouble.
There you go. Like if I take the worst of it, everybody else can take a little bit,
yeah,
right?
I can take if I'm taking the most of the shots, then that's okay. I'm going to go at this guy too.
Now, what is there a certain commercial shoot or the final product that you're maybe especially fond of, maybe one that sticks out, or maybe it's a group of them for you?
Well, the time when I was working the most and doing the most visible work was kind of the early 2000s, 2000 through 2010. So I was doing a whole lot of commercials for phone companies and car companies and financial institutions. I did a big introductory campaign when T.D. Waterhouse came to America that we did spots for that had Gina Davis and that had Phil Jackson and Martin Short, and then I did a lot of phone company commercials that were very well known, meaning they were shown a lot. A whole lot for New York Telephone, a whole lot for AT&T, a whole lot for Bell Canada. I usually was known for doing little stories, and usually 60-second stories. So that was what kind of fed me. I wasn't a guy who was doing super funny commercials. I wasn't doing beauty commercials where Kim Kardashian was looking into the camera trying to say a single syllable word. I was just doing normal commercials, but a lot of them, a whole lot of them.
Now, what's the biggest challenge in getting ready for a commercial? I mean, you think 30 or you think 60 seconds. I know radio and script based, it's always to get it. Everybody wants a 30-second commercial, but they want to put it in 60 seconds worth. What's the big deal with a 60-second commercial? How challenging is it to keep that 60 seconds?
It's as you know firsthand from radio, one of the things that we deal with, and I think radio commercials are also art forms. The writers who put these together and create these stories that you're going to bring to life by becoming the narration of it. You work backwards from a time constraint. So you have to learn to tell a story or convey that message inside of that parameter, that box. There's a skill to that. As you know, there are people who hand you a script and they go, "Hey, that's good." And you go, "Hey, that's terrible. I can even just look at it and tell you that it's 47 seconds. It's not going to work." So a lot of times, what you're doing in a television commercial is compressing how you tell the narrative, and so you learn little tricks that don't apply in movie making, as I learned. They don't apply in television, as I learned. They're very specific to advertising because they're so short. I think the biggest lesson was that you learn that less is more. When you complicate it and you try to put 10 pounds of shit in a 5-pound bag, there's stuff that just doesn't get in there, right? Mm-hmm. So you gotta, after you've done it a couple of times, you start to realize, oh, that's just too much stuff to put in the bag. And hopefully you also learn, oh, well, I do this for a living, so I can tell you what we're not going to put in the bag, and it's still going to be good.
Mm-hmm. Now, who was the biggest influence or maybe the help to you as you first got into the industry?
Very good question, because there wasn't anyone. I think I came in with either a great deficit or an incredible advantage, because I had nobody who was a mentor or telling me what the rules were. So as a result, when I put it politely, I say, oh, I was naive. I was just a dumb shit. I didn't know what was going on. So when I would try to do something, open a company when I was 23, or walk into agencies and say, this is my work, I didn't realize that what I was doing was just stupid. But I had the confidence that came with not knowing the rules. So I think that helped me a lot, Cameron, because it gave me, I never was looking at any situation as one that was insurmountable, because I hadn't had somebody who'd gone before me say, don't bother with that. It's impossible. You can't do that when you're young, or you can't do that when you don't have that kind of commercial on your reel. I felt like I could go out and try anything. And the other thing, great advantage that it gave me, was I got to make a lot of mistakes, but I learned from them.
Yeah. Yeah, the mistakes. I think my training in radio was much like yours in the business. It was kind of like here's where it goes. You push the buttons, you make the rest of it. And School of Hard Knocks. It's been a long 17 years, but it's a different product now than they saw in 2003. I promise you.
100%. And listen, I feel like what you and I have as a result of that is a completely different kind of knowledge, because it's not something that we've just taken on because somebody told us. We can go, oh yeah, I did that. Mm-hmm. But we've also had the successes that probably would not have come to us in the same way.
Right. Or an appreciation for what you got either.
Yeah, exactly right.
Now, I do want to make sure and let all of our listeners know again where they can find more information about the book and everything else you got going on as well.
Easiest two places to go are my website, which is brucevandusen.com. I don't, unfortunately, have a name like Bob Smith, so no one will ever find that, but it's BruceVanDusen.com. And I have that same thing at Instagram, where I kind of post things about events that I'm doing to promote the book and other things, which is Bruce Van Dusen, the numeral 1. Who knew that there was another Bruce Van Dusen who was going to use Instagram before me? The hell is that about?
They tried to steal your thunder.
Jeez, what is that about?
Well, Bruce, it has been great to visit with you. And like you said, going through the book, I love seeing the stories and the goods and the bads, because that's what makes us what we are, right?
That's what it's all about, man.
Well, Bruce, thank you for your time, brother.
Cameron, thanks for having me. Enjoy the rest of your day.
Our next guest is legendary B-movie director Brian Trenchard-Smith. He's going to talk about his new book as well. First off, Brian, thank you so much for taking the time to be on the show.
Well, it's a pleasure to be here, and it's always a pleasure to talk about my work. We directors are a little narcissistic, and I am no exception. And anyway, I'm glad you have had a chance to flip through the book. Is there anything that particularly intrigued you?
Yeah, I mean, my whole wondering is were B movies, was that originally the idea that was that kind of where your goal was, I guess, is starting out?
Well, it wasn't necessarily my goal. I mean, at 13, I went to the cinema by myself for the first time. Felt very grown up, and I saw Alfred Hitchcock's Vertigo, which would be the epitome of an A movie. And I realized that actually people got paid to make movies. And I thought, well, that's the profession I want. I can think of nothing better than to make these little fantasies for people to enjoy. But the kind of fantasies that I enjoyed growing up, and what you see growing up affects you as an adult when you start making films. The fantasies I enjoyed were, westerns, gangster movies, spectacular historical epics, horror movies, and raucous comedies. The movie business is was really divided into two streams. There's the A stream movie, and then there's the B stream movie. In those days, cinemas showed double features. So you had a less expensive film partnered with an expensive film, and that was the double feature. And there'd be a newsreel and a cartoon and trailers for next week's show and so forth. And that was the world that I grew up in, the world of cinema. And so I wanted to give the audience, I wanted to venture into all those genres that I had enjoyed so much as a kid. It's a disappointment that I never got to make a Gladiator movie. But, Ridley Scott got there ahead of me, shall we say. It was, my calling was to give people, laughs and gasps, give them, little variations on standard genre tropes as well. So I like combining genres. and turning them into interesting little cocktails. I mean, Man from Hong Kong was Kung Fu versus James Bond, where James Bond is the villain, not the hero. The hero is in fact Chinese, and he's smarter than all the white guys. So it was a reversal of the usual hero. Well, an American hero goes to Asia, beats up all the bad guys, beds a couple of women, and that was the way such stories were often done. I thought I would reverse the process and have a Chinese hero come to Australia, go after Mr. Big of crime, played by George Lazenby, one-time James Bond, and I gave the film a Bondish tone, so the film, was successful because it was a reversal of standard genre tropes, I sensibly wrote it. There's 18 minutes of dialogue and 106 minutes of action. Possibly, given the fact I wrote the dialogue, that was just as well. And I made it on a formula of one action scene, one dialogue scene, one action scene, one dialogue scene. And that was a formula that seemed to work. I've tried to, in all my films, I try to move things along and never try to avoid flat patches. If you have exposition, get through it quickly, go to the next set piece that people want to see. Time for the car chase. Okay. So that was, how my early years formed my personal taste in movies. And I set about making, such movies, generally on rather slender resources. But and so many of my movies have been called B movies, and I wear that as a badge of pride. Because we B movie makers, we aspire to make the A list of the B movies. We put the same the same passion and commitment and striving for excellence into a B movie as the people who make A movies do with better funded and bigger star movies than the ones that I made. So I'm lucky to have worked with some really nice actors and stars, Nicole Kidman, Jim Belushi, John Cusack, Thomas Jane. There's quite a long list. Anne Margaret, I had a wonderful time making Happy Face Murders with Anne Margaret. And there are a lot of stories in the book that I think people who are outside of the film business will enjoy. And certainly people who have any contact with it, and anyone involved in media, such as yourself, will find the book very accessible. But there again, I'm prejudiced because I wrote it.
And Brian, for you, how much?
I've reduced you to silence.
Yeah. How much pride do you take in?
Did we lose him?
No, I had a mute button. I'm sorry. I had a noisy dog. So yeah, I muted it.
How that is?
Yeah. So how much pride do you take in the fact of the acclaim that you've received in the following? I guess that you've had. I mean, the B movies became a thing of their own, and largely in part to you as well.
Well, it is gratifying to have your work recognized, and I know that I appeal to, or my work appeals to, a broad mass of the public. You might call them meat and potato movies as opposed to caviar movies, but there's nothing like a good meat and potato movie. I think I want to go in and be entertained for 90 minutes. And see something that I maybe wasn't quite expecting to see, be surprised occasionally within the movie. Oh, good Lord, they're going to kill him off. I thought he was going to live to the end of the picture. Oh, that's interesting. So, I like movies with twists and turns. I've tried to give the audience for my film that. And it's gratifying, obviously, to see that they're still buying my films either on Blu-ray or renting them, downloading them now from the various platforms where they exist, and that they're still pleasing an audience. I mean, that is very gratifying. And we look forward to doing it till I finally keel over.
And again, the book Adventures in the B-Movie Trade. We've got director Brian Trenchard-Smith. It has been a privilege and a pleasure to visit with you this morning. Hope you have a great rest of your week and a weekend, and hopefully we can visit again soon.
Yeah, that would be great. I would say that the book is a great thing to take with you for a Thanksgiving holiday visit. If you need therapy at some time or whatever, and go into a different world where the crazy uncles are really quite entertaining villains. So thank you very much for your interest.
Up next is author Clint Lorance. He's going to talk about his new book, Stolen Honor, and also his connections to Southwest Oklahoma. Clint, thank you so much for taking the time to be on the show.
Sure, it's great to be here. Thanks for having me.
Now, Clint, tell us about the book. Obviously, this is a true story, and it's called Stolen Honor, Falsely Accused, Imprisoned, and My Long Road to Freedom. And tell us tell us how the story began for you.
Sure. Actually, it began there in Kiowa County. I was actually born and raised partially in Hobart and Lone Wolf, and lived in Blair, and right there in Jackson County for a lot of my life. But we moved to Texas, and I joined the Army from Texas. And I ended up over the course of several years, I ended up in Afghanistan in 2012. And I was leading a joint U.S. and Afghan Army patrol in a remote sector of the southern part of Afghanistan. And the Afghan Army was up front, and they were supposedly in the lead because we were trying to hand the country back over to them. So we kind of had to force them to lead things. And they began to fire at a motorcycle that was approaching us as we were exposed and as we were crossing a road. Now, I could not see the threat, but I responded to what I was hearing on the radio and in real time from my men that were on the ground as well. And I ordered the Afghan soldiers to stop firing, and then I ordered my gun truck to fire with a heavy weapon system. My chain of command jumped to conclusions, and bowing to the political pressure of the day coming out of the Obama administration, charged several of us with murder. And I was ultimately court-martialed and sent to Fort Leavenworth, Kansas, for 20 years.
And what was the process of getting cleared and getting that long road to freedom? I mean, how long? Oh, sorry about that. How long was the road to freedom for you? I mean, how long once put in? I mean, and when was it that you knew you actually had some hope at the light at the end of the tunnel, if you will?
Sure. Well, while I was in Fort Leavenworth, my mom and some of my family reached out to an organization called United American Patriots. And once UAP got a hold of it, they started paying my legal bills, and I was able to get good attorneys that actually had the time to do the work. So those attorneys sent investigators over to Afghanistan, and they really dug into the case. And what they found was that the Army had DNA evidence proving that these men were not only bad guys, but they were also part of the same Taliban cell that had killed and maimed American soldiers and Marines. But that information was not presented at my trial. And also not presented at my trial was video footage that the Army had from an overhead blimp system of the Taliban setting in an ambush around us that day. And none of this was brought into my trial. So we presented that evidence while I was, by this time I was already at Fort Leavenworth. We presented this evidence to the Army appeals courts, who are, staffed by 3 Army colonels. And these colonels know who pay them, and they didn't want to hear it. They didn't want to hear that the Army had made a mistake. So they basically just rubber stamped it. So we then, UAP then reached out to the University of Chicago. The University of Chicago Law School sent a law student down to Fort Leavenworth And the law school ultimately prepared a packet to go up to President Obama at the time. And by this time, we had a lot of congressional support. We had governors of 2 states, two U.S. senators, state level representatives from places like Illinois and Texas. It was just crazy the amount of congressional support we were getting. And all these people were calling on President Obama to do something. And so once United American Patriots delivered a petition to President Obama, President Obama didn't even take the time to look at it. He just kind of shrugged. So all of that, sort of changed whenever President Trump got elected in 2016, because all the same people then asked President Trump for the same thing that they had been asking President Obama for. And President Trump looked at, by this time it was over 700,000 signatures sent to the Pentagon, and he responded to the Congressional Justice for Warriors caucus that was created as a response to what happened to me. They created a caucus to basically say, we're going to try to fix this to make sure it never happens again. But the president looked at that, and he looked at what the University of Chicago Law School had prepared, and he looked at all of the evidence that was hidden and that the original court never got to see. And he granted an unconditional pardon. So that was about 10 months ago now. It's almost 11 months actually. Time has just flown by. But in that time, I've been able to, I've been so blessed. I've been able to go back to Oklahoma a couple of times. I was in Lone Wolf in March to see some family, and I went out to visit my grandpa's grave there. And I've been able to get into law school here, and I'm in law school now.
And so are you hoping to maybe change the way things are handled in the first place? Is that your goal going back into law school?
Yeah, it is. So this caucus, this Congressional Justice for Warriors caucus, it's headed up by a Texas Congressman, Louis Gohmert. And we don't have any Oklahoma congressmen in it yet, but we need them. So what we need is folks to call the congressmen and the senators, and we need the members of the House of Representatives specifically to join this caucus. It's called the Congressional Justice for Warriors caucus, but right now it has about a dozen members, and they're all Republican. And essentially I'm working closely with them, but essentially what we're trying to do is we're trying to bring the military's Uniform Code of Military Justice. We're trying to bring it up to the same level of equity and fairness and constitutional fairness as the civilian courts are. So all of the state courts and the federal courts have already figured out certain things that need to be present to be able to have a fair system. And, one of those, just really briefly, one of those things is that the political, the mayors and the governors and stuff, they shouldn't be the ones deciding who gets charged with the crime. It should be a district attorney who has some formal legal experience, and it should be a non-political thing. In the military, though, what we're seeing is that people are being charged for political reasons, and that the person deciding who gets charged is a non-lawyer. It's a commander. And so one of the things that I'm trying to do, and we're trying to do through this caucus, is to reform the military justice system to make it to bring it up to the same level as the civilian courts are in terms of fairness and due process under the law and under the Constitution. Because I don't think that when somebody joins the world's greatest military, I don't think that they should have to give up any constitutional rights just because they're serving in the military. And that's what's happening right now. And I think that we can do better than that. And I think we can fix that. So that's sort of where I'm at. It's why I'm going to law school. I am definitely not fighting this fight alone. But that's sort of where we're at.
And if folks want to find out more information about the book and also the work that you're doing on so many other behalfs as well, where would they keep up with that information as well?
Yeah, there's a website for the book. It's stolenhonorbook.com. And for all the other initiatives that we've got going with all of the partners that we have, you can go to clintLorance.com. And that has all of our, all the things that we're trying to do right now. And you can keep up with all of that. And we're also on social media.
All right. Well, Clint, it's been great to visit with you. I hope you have continued success with the book, and best of luck going into law school, man. You're glutton for punishment, right?
It's definitely not an easy thing, but someone once told me that nothing worth having comes easy. So it's definitely something to look forward to, a challenge.
That's right. Well, Clint, it's been great to visit with you, and hope you have a great rest of your week, my friend.
All right, you too. God bless you.
And our final guest is actor and now director Colman Domingo, making his directorial debut this Sunday on Fear the Walking Dead on AMC. Like I mentioned before we came on the air, excited for him because this weekend marks his directorial debut there on Fear the Walking Dead. We've got Colman Domingo on the line, and first off, Colman, thank you for taking the time, my friend.
I appreciate you having me. How you guys doing?
Doing well, and the Fear the Walking Dead, I mean, how blown away are you by the way this whole franchise, just the fan reaction and participation socially as well?
I had no idea it was coming. This is now 6 seasons in for me, and it's been a gift that keeps on giving, to be honest. I took the role because it was something that I didn't feel like I understood how to do, and I'm drawn to things that I'm curious about. And it's been the journey of my life. I mean, come on, I've lived in LA and Mexico and now in Texas because of the show, and I'm directing on it. I feel such a part of this genre. And it's a genre that I think is just, really just shining a light on who we are as human beings. I feel like it shows who the best of us are and the worst of us, and with this really interesting genre. So I'm happy to be on this ride, man.
And Colman, there's folks out there, and I was one of those. It takes a while because they just can't get past the idea of the storyline. But beyond that, not the storyline, but what it's about. But beyond that, I mean, what
people, yeah. Well, that's the thing. I always tell people that, anyone who says, "Oh, I can't get into the gore or the zombies," I think it's something that they're afraid of. And I'm like, don't worry about it. Actually, it's actually more like it's actually a family drama with some sort of zombies that are just getting in the way. That's all it is. But it's really about the humans and what happens to us and who do we become. And I think that's a very interesting, examination. I feel like, we've all been through this and still going through this pandemic, that where we're examining who are we? Who are we at our best selves? And I think that's what the show has always been about. And what happens when things go awry? And how do we find love? How do we find family? How do we find agency in the world and move forward in a loving, joyous way? So that's what the show's actually about. There's just some zombies in there for fun.
and Colman, I like what you said there. You talked about being introspective and we're not real happy with things around us. But, it sparked a thought for me is that, a lot of times whenever we're poking at other people, it's because we're seeing things about ourselves we don't like. And I'm sure that's what a lot of us, unfortunately, are going through at this time.
Yeah, absolutely. I think that's what the show's about. And it's always been about. I think that's why the genre is actually so popular. I always wondered, because I was never like a Walking Dead or Fear the Walking Dead person, I thought in the beginning. But now I understand. I'm like, oh, that's why people are drawn to it and it gets this many viewers. So I'm always engaging. Once I get somebody on board to watch the first 3 episodes of season 1, then they're hooked. They're like, oh, I thought it was something different. I'm like, no, just watch the first 3 episodes and you'll see it's something that you actually, you're really going to fall in love with.
And I know you mentioned before we came on the air that something good did come out of the pandemic. You're directing, and for you, what did it put some extra pressure on you, knowing that these are folks that you've been working with for this many years, to kind of have to keep them in line, if you will,
sort of lead them, keep them in line, Nah, I work with such good people. They're great teammates, and so everyone wants you to thrive. I feel like that's just the nature of, I think, being in the arts, too. I think people, it's truly a community. And I think when people say, oh, we're a family, really believe it. I work with these people 12 to 16 hours a day. And so we know each other, we know each other's families. And I depend on them, and I depend on them for me to be successful as well. So when I'm taking the reins as a director, everybody wants you to win, from transportation to, PAs, background actors. Everybody's looking at you like, oh, we're going to help him get this. We're going to help him win this. And so that's what feels good. And they trust you. And then you have the responsibility of like knowing what you're doing. So I took myself through some training of watching other directors and listening and learning and asking questions. And I felt like I was ready for the job.
Now, does it make you have a different perspective on your own personal acting style as well as you look back?
Yes, absolutely. Let me tell you something. Actors are usually kept in their own little silos during the day. So a lot of times you're like, why is this taking so long? What's happening? Why did the schedule get turned around like this? There's so many things that you don't know because they keep you locked away in your trailer and then bring you out like this, brand new money and do your show, and then you go away. But now I have so much perspective on all the things that it takes to build an episode and all the things when it comes to time management. So I think, to be honest, I know I'm a bit more patient as an actor, a bit more understanding that, hey, certain things may happen or be cut or move around, and it's not about me. That's the thing you start to learn. None of it is about you. It's just all about managing the entire show.
That's right. Now, again, Fear the Walking Dead episodes Sunday evenings, 9 Eastern, 8 local time on AMC. Also, though, Colman, you've got a couple of other things. I mean, pandemic's not slowed you down, my friend.
It hasn't, man. I produced my show called Bottomless Bunch of Colmans, which is on the AMC platform. People can go watch that right now. So AMC.com. And I have guests like Carmen and Julia Stiles and David Dix from Hamilton on it. That's been a great time for me to do during the pandemic. And then I have a film coming out, a couple of things coming out in December. A new episode of Euphoria. It's a very special Christmas episode with just myself and Zendaya. And then I also have Chadwick Boseman's final film that I star in as well, called Ma Rainey's Black Bottom. And that is truly it's a seminal piece of work by August Wilson, directed by George Wolfe for Netflix. And I cannot wait for people to see it.
And looking back on that, working with Chadwick, I mean, how proud are you of that next work that folks are going to get to see?
Man, first of all, we're both Sagittarians. We're both born a day apart, and we had such a bond. And we were ready to ready to rehearse the film, do the film, and then promote the film. So it's kind of bittersweet, to be very honest, because you feel like you created a piece of work together so intimately, and you want to get it out into the world together. And so it feels like a different responsibility. And I'm so proud of the work that's there. And I know that Chad was proud of it as well. I spoke to his wife at his memorial, and the first thing she said was it was a piece of work that he was absolutely proud of more than anything. So for this to be his signature final film, I feel so proud to be a part of it. And, it's the things you hope to be used as an artist, be a part of someone's legacy, their dream. And I feel like we did it, and we did him justice as well. And I felt like I did myself justice too.
There you go. Again, Fear the Walking Dead, Sunday evenings, 9 Eastern, 8 local time on AMC. Also, Euphoria, the Ma Rainey's Black Bottom, many other things coming up. Colman, I want to make sure and let our listeners know where to keep up with everything social media-wise as well.
Yeah, man, you can find me. I have a weird handle on Instagram called King of Bingo. Don't even ask what it's about. But
no judging here.
Bingo, but it's lucky. King of Bingo on Instagram and on Facebook and Twitter. I'm just Colman Domingo. There's no Ian Colman ever. Just Colman Domingo. And then I have a website, ColmanDomingo.com, where you can find out more fun things about me. And I respond to people too. Just know I love engaging with fans and people who are talking about art and interesting things, politics, you name it. So I'm not afraid. Bring it on. Talk to me.
There you go. Colman, it has been truly a privilege and a pleasure to visit with you this morning. Hopefully we can catch up again real soon. Continued success, and have a great rest of your week, brother.
Thank you, brother. You take care.
Thanks again for joining us for this 38th episode of Good Questions with Cameron Dole. If you ever have a comment, question, or anything else you'd like to know, find me on Instagram, Twitter, and Facebook at GQ with Cam. If you'd like to help out in the funding for this podcast, feel free to click the support tab and follow the instructions. If you have a special guest idea, feel free to email me, gqwithcam@gmail.com. We'll see you tomorrow for episode 39.